Welcome back to Astrology, Angels, and More. I'm your host, Mary Silvernail, and we have a very interesting show for you tonight. Today is May 14th, 2025. And I'm going to be talking about some of the astrological aspects for the month of May and also giving all of you your horoscope by each sign. And then after that, we'll be meeting someone that's very interesting. He's an author and also an empath. Have you ever wondered if you're an empath? I think after tonight's show, you may decide whether you really are or you aren't. Very interesting show. Now, first of all, happy birthday, Taurus. But we're going to first be talking about your horoscope, Aries. Now, when I talk to you about each horoscope, this is actually from my horoscope column that I write. And if you see me reading something, I'm reading from my actual column. Now, when I discuss a particular sign, I'm talking about either your sun sign or your rising sign. So you should pay attention to both and put both together, and it's going to make a lot more sense. But especially your rising sign, if you know what your rising sign is. And that's due to the time of day that you were born, where the sun was on the horizon. First of all you Aries out there, your batteries are charged and you're ready to soar to great heights. Your energy is just unstoppable now. By mid-month, which we're already in now, new networking opportunities come into play for you. Taurus, happy, happy, happy birthday, Taurus. It's your month to shine. This is the start of your new solar year, and bright new opportunities abound. This is what you've been waiting for. Gemini, you're learning about new emotional aspects of yourself that have been buried very deep for a very long time. Work on what is within, and it will bring clarity to you. Cancer, your family is taking front and center for you, Cancerians. Open up the lines of communication to resolve misunderstandings from the past. There will be a happy ending. Leo, as always, beautiful Leo shines. You are getting noticed in the workplace, bringing about a lot of financial rewards. Virgo, this is the month to let your hair down and relax, Virgo. A trip is in your stars. Take along some sweet company to enhance the fun. Libra, look toward your future and you'll appreciate what is waiting for you down the road. Continue to strive toward your ultimate goal. It is not as far in the future as you previously believed. Actually, it's right around the corner, Libra. Scorpio, focus on your physical well-being and everything will fall into line. This is the time to concentrate on you, Scorpio. Sagittarius, a lot of positive energy is in your stars, Sag, especially concerning partnerships of all kinds in your life. Open up the lines of communication. Capricorn, there is a brand new you about to emerge. Your interactions have changed with others, which can be difficult for some to understand, but you're right where you need to be. Aquarius, opportunity arrives at the end of the month. Lots of social interaction pays off very handsomely. Accept those invitations. Very beneficial for you, Aquarius. Pisces, your intuition is heightened this month. Trust your instincts, especially in career matters. Creativity is very strong now. Express your ideas. Don't keep them to yourself. Express them. Keep your heart open for love, Pisces. Water-related activities always rejuvenate you. Now, here are some of the special planetary aspects for May. As far as Taurus, the sign of the month, it's the second sign of the zodiac with Venus as its ruling planet. Green is the color associated with Taurus, although many Taurians adore the color blue. Taurians adore the color blue. Actually, Taurus is loyal, persistent, stubborn, determined, and realistic. They make the best friends, very, very loyal friends, of all the zodiac. Many are bankers, accountants, or even real estate brokers because Taurus rules money and property. Now, I'd like to mention that since May the 4th, and it will be going through October the 13th of 2025, Pluto is retrograde in Aquarius. Whatever is hidden will come to the surface. It is a time to be reassessing how we use our power. Pluto will be in Aquarius for the next 18 years. Now, realize when I talk about planetary aspects, I'm talking about individually how it affects you personally, right? And also how it affects even the world as a whole. Now, May the 12th, we had that beautiful full Scorpio flower moon, which we're still feeling the effects of now on May 14th. We become more aware of the areas of our lives that need balance in order to live a healthier life physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It's a time to recognize others' contributions to who you are and who they are. Be aware of impulsiveness to make changes too abruptly due to the sun's conjunction to Uranus. Sudden changes. Think things through before making any big moves. Now, on May 20th, less than a week from now, the sun will enter Gemini. So, happy birthday to you too, Gemini. Coming up. May 26th, we have that Gemini new moon. A new beginning is underway, especially in the way we communicate with others. Gemini is all about communication. By focusing on this positive energy, we can improve our communication skills and open our minds to new learning in a way we never experienced before. This is a great time for socialization and networking. Now realize, you keep on hearing on the news about AI. You know, that's all about Gemini. Plus, with Pluto being in Aquarius, looking into the future, it all makes perfect sense. So now, I'd like to introduce our special guest tonight. It's the first time he's ever been on our show, Robert Armbrust. He's here. Armbrust, excuse me. I'm correcting myself. Come on in, Robert. Come on in, Rob. We're looking forward to you. Have a seat. Okay, now, there you go. Welcome. Welcome to Astrology, Angels, and More.
Well, thanks, Mary. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
He's an author of Lessons from an Empath. Wonderful book. Yeah. Very interested about talking about it tonight. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I guess to give you a little context, I'll tell you a little bit about my background.
Yes, please.
I grew up in Pennsylvania. And I came from a pretty, I guess you would call, stable, conventional family. I was into sports as a kid, Boy Scouts.
What sports did you like?
I was like Little League Baseball,
Oh,
and, that type of thing.
nice.
Yeah, I ran track in high school, and I was also a member of the band, took part in all those kinds of activities.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Nice childhood.
yeah, it actually was, especially when I talked to different people about some of the difficulties they had. And you don't appreciate that until you get like a broader view of things that are going on.
Yeah, you're also a psychotherapist, right?
Well, I was a psychologist, and I worked in the schools for 25 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
my main emphasis was on testing and helping kids develop programs that were for special education and stuff. I did a little bit of counseling, but that was not the main focus of the job.
I see. Okay. And so now you had a tremendous awakening.
Right, that's true.
When did that happen?
The other thing I should say, even though I had kind of a conventional upbringing, I was always interested in things like UFOs, remote viewing, near-death experiences, all those kinds of things.
Wow.
And I'm a real bookworm, so I've read a lot of different things, done a lot of research in those areas.
Very interesting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you've been on your journey.
Yes.
Yes, you have, huh? Now, when did you become interested in the spiritual side of things, though?
Very early on, and I got interested in psychology actually when I was only 13 years old.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about that? 13, that's pretty young.
Yeah, that is. I picked up a book at actually a church bazaar for a quarter or something.
Yeah.
And it was called Release from Nervous Tension. It was written by a psychiatrist.
Okay.
And I read the book and I thought, this is the kind of stuff I want to be doing. I just knew it.
Really?
Yeah,
and why did you feel that you wanted to do that?
Because
Why?
everything in the book resonated with me. This is, there's people that have these difficulties, and I want to understand them and see if I can help them.
And see if you
Yes,
could help them.
right.
There you go. There you go.
You can probably relate to that in the work
Totally.
that you do.
Totally. And all empaths, that's why this show is really, it's about your book, and it's also so people can figure out if they're empathetic.
I don't know if they're going to be able to tell just from this book because it's more
Yeah.
about my experience, but they'll be able to relate to
They'll
it.
be able to relate quite a bit because a lot of times people don't know whether they are an empath or not. They kind of think they are, but they're not sure and all of that. So, tell us a little bit more about your experience, especially this camouflage reality.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about the awakening experience because I didn't know I was an empath up until that point.
Oh, how old?
This just happened in 2019.
Get out of here. Wow.
I mean, I know as a psychologist about empathy. I mean, I dealt with people all the time, and that was one of the primary, emotional things that people have in terms of their maturity.
And how would you describe that then?
Well, you tune in to people's emotions, you pick up on it, and there's different degrees. Everybody has at least a little bit of empathy, except people who are known to be sociopaths. Apparently they don't, but almost everybody else has at least some, so it's certain degrees.
Empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you have a real lot of it, then you qualify as being an empath or whatever.
So what about the difference between intuition and empathy?
I would say intuition is very closely related to that, very closely. Empathy deals with intuition, I would say also telepathy. That's very closely related, all of those things.
Very.
And there are different types of empaths. There's some that are more, deal with more like clairvoyance and that type of thing. And others that are maybe clairaudient, things like that. These are all very closely related.
And the feelings, mostly as an empath, you pick up on the feelings. You can't help but connect to those feelings. That can become overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, some people, that's a problem for some people. It is.
Yeah.
And you have to have certain protections to develop if it becomes a problem like that.
When you say protections, what do you mean?
You have to be able to back off and put up kind of like boundaries so it doesn't become or maybe even remove yourself from certain situations.
Right.
A lot of empaths have difficulty like going to a funeral because of the very strong vibrations there.
Yes, yes. Or, I mean, I have friends of mine, and even myself in a crowd, if you're really like in close contact with a large number of people, it can become overwhelming. And but I have a friend of mine, he hates going to a mall.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
I have a problem with crowds. Empaths tend to be very sensitive too.
Yeah.
Especially to noises, large groups, things like that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I understand completely because I'm the same way. Because, well, Bob and I, I'm sorry, Rob, and I have known each other for a little bit now.
Right?
Yeah. We've been friendly for a while. So go ahead. This is very interesting because your book is extremely interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about the awakening experience because that's when I
Please.
found out that I was an empath.
Tell us.
This was 2019, August 8th. And 8 happens to be my power number, and I had the double 8s. So
Oh, that's a portal.
if you're into numerology,
Very much so.
that probably had something to do with this.
Yeah, well, that's a portal. A portal opened
Yeah.
universally on 8/8, and that's the Lion's Gate.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's
Oh,
even more.
you should look into that. We did a show on the Lion's Gate. I think it was last August.
Really? I would be interested in that.
Yeah. So that's when it happened to you, huh?
Right, yes.
That's the Great Awakening, huh?
So I was vacationing in Pennsylvania. Actually, it wasn't a vacation. It was just a little time off. And I was by myself. And I got up in the morning, and all of a sudden, I got this, what I would call a download from my higher self. And it said, something wonderful is going to happen to you.
Beautiful.
And I didn't question it. I didn't, if somebody came up to me on the street and said that, I'd say, what are you talking about? Am I going to win the lottery? Or, But it just came, and then within the next 12 hours, I started seeing synchronicities all over the place, everywhere.
Like?
I saw things happen, and I knew exactly all the events that led up to it. I would run into people and have a conversation with them, and it was like I could read the gist of their thoughts. I knew exactly what they were going to say before they ever opened their mouth.
Wow.
And that was a little difficult because I would be with somebody, and they would start talking. I thought, I already know what you're going to say, and you're going through all these movements with your mouth and making these sounds. It's totally unnecessary, Of course, I didn't say that. I held back because that wouldn't go over too well.
Yeah,
But-
not
so-
just that. Yeah, could
but-
insult them, but also scare them.
Yeah, right.
Right?
So there was a little bit of disorientation with what was happening too, because I felt like basically my frequency was kind of bumped up.
Absolutely,
right.
it was.
I mean, we know from Nikola Tesla and some others that everything is frequency and vibration at that
Yes, it is.
at the basic level.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah, and the healing, I mean, even with the megahertz sounds and all that. Wow, we could really get into that, you and me, Rob. But go ahead now. Tell us what else happened.
Well, I'll give you another example of what was happening, and it lasted about 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yes.
Now, you said you were on vacation in Pennsylvania.
Well, it was more of just a weekend type thing, right?
Okay, but while you were there, was it that you were in, were you in the mountains, the woods? Were you?
No, it was just.
Was it a different
It was
environment?
a friend's house. It was actually a basement apartment. I was staying there temporarily, and I don't think it had that much to do with the setting, although maybe it did, because you're at a higher elevation
You
there.
are. Yes.
The other thing is my frequency was at a pretty high level because. Coincidentally, I happened to be on a diet where I was doing some fasting, and that has a big effect.
Yes. Yes, it does.
And a short time before that, I lost a pet that was, I had a very long time. We had to put her down.
I'm sorry.
And I was very close to the animal. If anybody's had to do that, they can appreciate that. And,
Yes,
So it was the
unfortunately.
previous night that I got, really sad over that and had a release of all that grief. And so I had all those things kind of converging before all this happened.
That's kind of overwhelming.
Yes.
Not kind of. It is
Yes.
overwhelming. I've
Yes.
been down that road. And, one thing I have to say here, though, that I'd like to interject, and I don't know, and I'm not putting you on the spot about this, but you know that I'm all about angels, right? And when you said download, that is a word that I use quite often, and have been since the 1990s, late 80s, because that's what had been happening to me. I had been receiving downloads from the angels.
Right.
But they were very, very strong in letting me know that it was them and identifying each one of them as I would receive the download. So, and then you say that you had just the day before lost your pet?
Well, actually, the pet had been put down a while earlier, but my life was so crazy I couldn't deal with it. But I had some space at that time where that sadness came up and it just overwhelmed me.
Yes. Well, can I tell you too, though? I mean, the way it was, and this was a doggie?
Yes.
Okay. And, I know myself, the way I view dogs, I mean, you spell dog backwards, it's God. And it's total unconditional love. Cats, too. And, but dogs, I feel, are really just a little more, than cats. And the thing is that perhaps you were being given this connection, and perhaps maybe even through your doggie.
That's a possibility.
Because you got quiet. See, you got quiet.
Right.
Prior to that, you weren't quiet, right? Is that what was happening?
Right. There was an awful lot of stress going on in other areas of my life, so this was the first breathing space I had, and that's when I dealt with the grief over the pet. So I never thought of that, but possibly, the pet went on to the spirit realm, and might have been a kind of a spirit guide type thing.
Yes, I'm telling you, I really feel that. I feel that a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know you have a lot of intuition. And,
yeah.
I felt it came from my higher self because the voice seemed very familiar.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. But there could be the little opening there, the little connection there, and then your higher self. Yeah.
Right.
Because even as your wife is also a hypnotherapist.
She is. Yes.
Pam. Lovely lady. And, her and I have discussed different things in reference to hypnotherapy. And I know myself, whenever I do a past life regression, who really the information is coming from during the past life regression is actually your higher self. When I regress a person, really what they're doing is they're connecting to their higher self, and that's how the information comes through about their past lives. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't want to get off track because we have a lot of things to cover here. Go ahead.
I'll just give you one episode that happened the very next day after I got that information. I was going into a supermarket, and there was a guy in his early 70s came over, and he was coming out, pushed the shopping cart over. He says, "Here, take this cart." I said, "Okay, thanks." I said, "You're a very generous guy." And he kind of stood there, and he said, Yeah, I am a generous guy." I said, "Yeah, I knew that before he ever gave me the shopping cart."
Say.
And then he turns to tell me, "I know you did because you're an empath."
He said that to you?
Yes. And he says, "The reason I know you are is because I'm an empath." Okay. And like I said, I knew the term empathy, but I never heard, the term empath used before.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then he turns around and starts to walk away. And I said, "Well, wait a minute, come back here. You got to explain something to me." He says, "Oh, I'm too old to be any help to you." He says, "That doesn't work that way, And I was just kind of standing there a little befuddled, and he could see that. So finally he came over and he leans over, he's telling me this big secret. And he says, when you go into a bar and you realize that there's some kind of danger there and you need to get out?
Yeah.
I said, "I know exactly what you mean."
Yeah.
He says, "That's what it means being an empath."
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I said, "Okay,
You just feel it.
He said, "The other day a friend of mine came to me. He said, our buddy Joe, he did this crazy thing. I can't believe it. Can you believe he actually did that?" And he said, "Yeah, I knew. I saw 10 years ago he was going to do that." So he had this precognition and he had clairvoyance. And
very interesting, yes.
And right after that, then I researched what it meant to be an empath. And
what happened? Everything started clicking?
Right. There's, in fact, Judith Orloff, who is kind of like the guru of empaths. She has a questionnaire on her site. It's free if anybody wants to use it.
Right.
And you get on, there's like I think 20 questions.
Yes.
And if you're over a certain number, then you're considered a full-blooded empath. And out of like the 20, I had like 17.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So, now how has this changed your life?
Well, it was pretty drastic in the beginning, and I've done a lot of research in terms of people having awakening experiences, things like near death and stuff like that. And I would say that mine was like in the moderate category, because like when this happens, there's a shift in your identity and the way you look at the world. So not only do you change, the way you look at everything else changes as well. I mean, I came away looking at what I call reality as being a lot more malleable than I thought it was. And then there's a cascading effect because it affects your relationships. And fortunately, my wife, she's very understanding. She's a hypnotherapist herself, but it was a little struggle for her because in extreme cases where you have like a really pronounced awakening experience, your whole personality changes. And,
Yes.
and the people close to you think, well, this isn't the person,
Yes.
that I married or who I've been, and sometimes that precipitates a divorce, or many times the people will quit their job and do something else because they don't feel like it's meaningful what they've been doing. So there's there's a
Big
negative
changes
side to
happen
this.
in the Great Awakening. Yeah,
There's what they call the dark night of the soul,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I talk about that a lot.
and that can last a long time. People can be in that for a year or two till you reintegrate all the new
That's right.
information.
And I got to tell you something else. You can also have more than one
Yes.
dark night of the soul. And I say that because I personally experienced more than one.
Did you?
The whole thing is, though, that, I grew up this way. So, I mean, it was recognized because my whole family is that way. So I just grew up this way. So it isn't like there was all of a sudden something happened. Different levels of understanding and awakening would happen throughout my life. And I remember one very similar to what you're talking about with your awakening experience, where actually I experienced it with my sister, my older sister and I together. We were at the same time going through this, and it was very unusual. And anyway, long story short, so she was a numerologist, and, I've always been an astrologer, and, my family, as I said, is that way. But I'll never forget, some things happened for both of us, especially after our father passed away.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And what happened was, the way I would describe it is though a window opened and I looked out, and it was just such a higher level of understanding.
Yes.
You can never close that window again.
I can identify
See
with that. Yeah.
You can't shut it down, can you?
No. In fact, the subtitle of my book is My Encounter with the Enchanted Reality.
Beautiful.
Because that's how it changes, almost like a fairy tale.
Yes. Yes. So
And you realize that there are sub-levels of what's going on here.
Yeah. Exactly. And but I have to tell you, that didn't happen for her and I. We already had been, I did astrology. I had always been, if you want to use the term, psychic, et cetera. My sister also, very gifted woman. However, it went to such a high level after our father passed away. And I feel that it was our connection with him. That's one of the reasons I brought up about your dog.
Right, exactly.
I'm really serious.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that, and I think it's very likely.
When but also you were talking about analysis of the camouflage reality. What do you mean? Talk about that.
Well, the status quo world would like everybody to think that this is the one reality, this is it. And, what else happens? All right, there's scientists, exploring different things. But the world is basically like what you hear on the news, and that's it. they would just as soon you not know that.
Exactly.
People, I'm sure your viewers are beyond that, but that is still the main focus of most of the people in the world.
Exactly.
They buy right into that, and they, you know.
So we're getting into like a matrix kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Here. Okay, go right ahead.
And we've been in, and it's basically a fear-based matrix.
Yes.
Fear is what's running everything, and we've been at it for a very long time. And I see us moving out of that into, I guess, what you might call the age of Aquarius.
We're in the age of Aquarius now,
Yes.
Rob.
Yeah, I believe that.
We are. Astrologically, we are. We are in the age of Aquarius.
And despite what you might see in terms of the news and everything, there are more awakened people on the planet now than ever before, and it's happening.
Yeah,
you know?
collectively.
Yeah, it's going to take a while. I mean, I think before it comes to full fruition, we're maybe about 4 generations away yet. But there are people who've already kind of flipped the switch and are operating at the higher frequency right now, because that's the frequency that's based on unconditional love, and you can reorient yourself to get to that level.
You know, the Native American people have always known this. Okay, the progression of it, and so yeah, it's pretty much. So when you talk to other people, do you express this, or do you keep it to yourself, or do you differentiate between who would have an understanding of this and who wouldn't?
I'm very selective about who I talk to, because I know some people who are very much into the conventional reality.
Yes.
Who you know, I have a good friend of mine. He said if it isn't proven in the lab scientifically, it's you know, it doesn't exist, or it's just not worth your time. And we have a wonderful relationship playing golf and doing things like that, but I would never, you know, get into this because, you know, it's if you have a rigid belief system of any type, whether it's religious or political, you're pretty locked into that. And until you're ready to move out of it, you know, if I have people that, you know, find out that I wrote a book like this and they have questions, then I'll engage them or whatever, you know. And
there you go. Well, so now, when you were talking about the universal laws, see, that's really. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? That's in your book, right?
Okay, it is. In fact, the best review of my book, I had an editor do the editing. She was from England, and she you know, finished it up for me. She did a nice job, and she said, and she reads hundreds of books. And she said to me, "Your book is a lot." She uses those 2 words.
It is.
Yes.
There's a lot compacted.
Because I included an awful lot of it. This is just not the story of my awakening. There's also sub-stories of interesting people that I knew, some in my family, some otherwise. And it gets into a lot of other territories. So you're getting that in addition. I do think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I tried to, you know, being a psychologist, to present what does it look like to be a fulfilled person from a mental health perspective, and that's in there.
Okay.
And in fact, one of the things I'll mention, your viewers might not be familiar with this, is there's something called the 50-50 rule.
Oh, why don't you explain
Which
to our
means
audience?
the most people who are most fulfilled spend 50% of their time servicing other people and being of help to them, and 50% of their time nurturing themselves. And when I say other people, it could be people in your family. If you're at work, it could be customers, clients, things like that. And it's a good idea every once in a while just to take a look back at your life and say, how much time in the past week or month did I spend doing that, and how much time did I spend doing, you know, nurturing myself, doing the things that I enjoy.
Good idea. This is important.
Yes. And if it's 60-40, it doesn't have to be exactly 50-50, but if it's way out of whack, you need to take a look at that. You know?
Yes, you do, because we need balance.
Yes, exactly.
Yin yang.
Exactly. And there are people who are termed people pleasers, who they're almost, you know, 90% of the time they're just running all over, and in the end they usually get burned out. You know. So.
Well, can I tell you? I know a lot of Virgos that are, you know, always trying to. Take care of everybody, you know. There's a couple of different signs in the zodiac like that, but and when you talk about empathic, Pisces is usually the number one. you know. But any water sign or Cancerians, you know.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, because they feel everything very deeply. But Pisces, they feel it like they're more psychic than any other sign of the zodiac. Scorpio is another water sign. They're also very telepathic, okay? But, when you get into the universal laws, I really want to understand that a little bit better.
Well, I mentioned about 4 of them, but I think 2 maybe they're the most important. One is the law of vibration, which explains that, this reality is based on that you're only going to experience what you are the vibration of. In fact, there's a saying, seeing is believing. You've heard that?
Yes.
It's exactly the opposite. Believing is seeing. Because if you don't believe it, you're never going to see it.
Everything's a hologram. That's
Yes,
my belief.
Exactly. We live in a holographic
We
universe.
project it.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
And, what you truly believe to be is going to be. And that's what manifestation is.
Yeah.
That's the
the
law
other,
of return.
Yes. And that's the law of attraction, which is the other
Yes.
universal law.
Yes.
Which is happening constantly. We're constantly attracting into our lives the thing that will help us grow. We're like magnets that way.
Yes.
And
If you keep the focus in a healthy
yes,
way.
yeah. And life isn't happening to you; it's flowing, and it's kind of what you're looking at is your inner self when you look at the outside world, because you're creating your own reality. That's what my research has been. I've read probably a couple of hundred spiritual books, or metaphysical books now, and watched numerous podcasts with not only ascended masters, but people, and these awakening experiences like I had are a lot more common than people think.
Much more common. And near-death experiences are more common than people know. Yeah. Oh, my God. Have you ever had a near-death experience?
That I have not. I've talked to people that have. But I remember back in the 80s when the first book came out, people thought, well, this was a pretty rare thing.
Okay.
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
I think it was Raymond Moody's book.
I remember very well.
But now I think, at last count, there's like over 1 million people have had these.
Oh,
and some people have had multiple ones. Yeah.
Yes, I've had 2.
Have you really?
Yes, I have. And actually on another show that I host with the other co-host, the 2 of us, Tommy and I, we talk about this from time to time because he's had near-death experiences, and so have I, and a lot of the guests that come on. So, which many times a spiritual awakening does not happen to someone sometimes until a near-death experience. Yeah, that could be one of the ways of an awakening. Because then you realize, you know what I mean?
That's pretty pronounced.
Right? It's pretty pronounced. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But any of the other universal laws that you feel are important
those
to
are the 2 main
here?
ones. There's a number of others, but I would say those are the 2 main ones. And you can use, once you understand the law of attraction and manifestation, you can use things like vision boards and things like that to accelerate your experience to manifest things.
Right. The biggest thing is with manifestation that I have found to be is that besides having the vision board, you have to really see yourself, feel yourself. Feel yourself.
You have to project yourself into the future in the spot you want to be.
Exactly.
Well, what you're actually doing.
Every detail of it.
Because we're in a temporal thing here with time, which is in many respects an illusion. What you're doing is cause and effect are like 2 sides of the same coin. So you're creating the effect, and then the cause is following later. It has to. So I guess I'll mention 3 very important laws relating to manifestation.
Yes.
And this is something, there's a woman by the name of Florence Colville Shinn, and she wrote a book back in the early 1920s called The Game of Life and How to Play It.
1920s.
Yes.
All the way back. There was a lot of spiritualism back in that era.
Exactly.
Oh, you're aware of that.
I was going to mention the same thing.
The spiritualists. Yes, absolutely.
I would say between 1890 and like about 1930, there was some kind of renaissance going on there. And we had the big people in the field back then were like Darwin and Sigmund Freud, and they kind of eclipsed. But there was all these other people, and there were seances going on over the place.
Oh, yeah.
People, mediums making contact. It's a very interesting period. I read quite a few books from back then.
What do you? Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know about Lily Dale up there in New York State. Okay, it's a whole town of spiritualists.
Well, that I didn't hear about.
Oh yeah, you should go there. You and Pam should take a nice little trip up there. It's right up there on the lake, and what it is the whole town. Like, you cannot own property unless you are a proven spiritualist.
Wow.
Yeah, you
That's
can't
incredible.
own a house there. A very interesting place. You guys would love it. Okay, you'd fit right in.
I would. That's worth a trip. It's got to be on my list.
You'd fit right in. This is what we're talking about. Look it up.
Okay.
So, but anyway, so what do you think happened? And then all of a sudden it was like it was taboo. What do you think happened? I mean, you even said up until the 1930s.
What has shut it down? That was probably one of the big effects back then was the First World War. And there was a lot of repercussions from that. I don't know on the collective level. I couldn't say for sure.
Where maybe people were so focused on the earthly bound at that time because of the horrid things, and then the depression, and right?
The collective kind of subsumed all of that.
Right. So now collectively, what we were talking about that's going on now is that we're all moving up to a higher level of consciousness.
We have a lot more mediums. We have a lot more people doing channeling. All that.
Now, but anyway, continue, please, about
I was talking about
universal laws are very interesting.
The three laws of manifestation, and
yes,
Florence Scovel-Shinn put these in her book, and these are like the basic. There's three. The first one is when you create from a place of love and compassion, you will get exactly what you want.
Yes,
that's rule number one. Rule number two, you create from a place of fear, you will get the opposite of what you want.
Absolutely.
And rule number three, if you create from a place of doubt, you will get nothing or you'll get a mixed bag.
Well, doubt, that you don't believe it. So if you're doubting it,
it's probably not going to happen.
You don't believe it. You're not going to manifest it. You have to
or if you're half doubting, you might get a little, but you're not going to get what you want. Yeah. Those are very basic rules, but if you look at your life or anybody else's, I guarantee you'll see those laws that were in operation. And if you understand at a really deep level and want to use those, you can make some major changes in your life.
Why don't you repeat them again for our audience, the three?
Right. Rule number one, when you create from a place of love and compassion, you will get exactly what you want.
Beautiful.
Rule number two, which is pretty much the opposite, when you create from a place of fear, you will get the opposite of what you want. And the final one, when you create from a place of doubt, you'll get nothing or you'll get a mixed bag.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. I have to tell you that many years ago, I literally manifested the house that we're living in right now. Literally.
I believe that.
On purpose.
Yes.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
On purpose. Absolutely. Yeah. The house at the shore.
My wife Pam did almost the same thing with the home she bought too.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, so let's see. What about the mental health perspective of all this? What about that?
That was the 50-50 rule I was talking about. I also have in the book 17 characteristics of a really mentally healthy person. And that's listed there.
That's in the book.
And another 17 characteristics of people who are dysfunctional and have difficulties. And you can look at those and take a look at where you're at. And, nobody's perfect. I'm sure even in the negative list, you're going to find a couple. But it's interesting to look at that.
Yeah, especially since you being a mental health professional for many, many years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. My goodness, you were interested in mental health all the way back at 13 years old.
Yes.
Gee whiz. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And is there anything else that you wanted to talk about the mental health part of this, that piece?
I would say, look at that 50-50 rule and check on your life every once in a while.
Very good point. I love it.
Now, there is an exception. If you or somebody in your family comes down with something like cancer, then that 50 rule goes out the window, because your entire, your life experience is at stake then, and 90% of your time is going to have to be focused on overcoming that illness, or you're not going to be around. So, in extreme conditions like that, then that doesn't apply.
But you're talking about life in general.
Right, exactly.
The 50-50 rule.
Right.
That is wonderful advice, because balance.
Yes. Absolutely.
My son Daniel, he truly believes in balance in life. And I got to tell you, I mean, when listening to him talk about it, it makes perfect sense to me. But it is all about the yin yang. Yeah, cool. Okay, is there anything else about the mental health?
Those are the main things, I think.
Yeah, pretty good.
I mean, I would say, too, there's a lot of basic stuff that most people know. I mean, basic things like, you watch your diet, make sure you exercise. I would say the one other thing about mental health, which I do emphasize in the book, and I don't think it's emphasized enough, is people really need to be meditating every day.
Though, I got to tell you, I agree with you.
Yes.
To connect. However, I have a lot of my clients that tell me, I can't meditate.
Okay.
I don't know how to meditate. I try to meditate, but my mind wanders. What would you suggest?
Okay, I struggled myself for a long time. And I tried to meditate, and most of the time I fell asleep. So.
That's okay, but you're going into that alpha state,
exactly.
right? That alpha state, that's where I bring people almost every day in my office.
Yeah, but we had a synchronicity. Pam took me to a meditation seminar run by a woman from the Hindu tradition.
Oh.
And I meditated using her methods, and I talked to her, and she gave me some pointers. And one of the things I do when I meditate is I do it immediately as soon as I get up in the morning. So I've already had a night's sleep.
Yes.
And so that was a big help.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Plus the breathing.
Yes.
Does she discuss the breathing?
The breathing, focusing on that, because otherwise your mind will tend to wander.
Yeah.
So either that or your bodily sensations. And since then, I've experimented with all different kinds of meditation.
Oh.
I'm still doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you travel around a lot in those meditations? No.
There's a couple of great apps on the phone you can get.
Yeah.
Insight Timer. There's thousands on there, people from all different kinds of traditions. And all you need is a phone or an MP3 player and a headset.
Well, there's all kinds of, I mean,
And a space.
Yeah.
That can be a problem, too.
And what about people who say they don't have enough time to meditate?
You can start out with as little as 10 minutes, and hopefully build up to like 20 minutes or a half hour. Although if you've never done it before, 10 minutes can seem like a long time.
Right.
Because, one of the problems being in a technological age is we have stimulus coming at us all the time between, video games and social media and all the different things. And that's why I think you need meditation. You have to clear that out. Otherwise, because it really makes a difference over time in your thinking.
Have you ever experienced crossing timelines with...
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, within your meditations or within your dream state, or, because being an empath, and especially some of the things we discussed here, I wonder.
I don't know if I've crossed timelines, but I've had about 6 what I would call lucid dreams where I'm conscious in the dream.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I wrote them down because if you don't, they get lost real quick.
You have to keep a pad and a pen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or some people, they immediately, talk into their cell phone when they wake up and say what it is.
And in fact, I'm interested in taking a course on it because there's people who can learn to do it, not every night, but several times a week, and that's can be tremendously helpful in terms of discovering things about yourself.
How has it helped you?
You'll find out some things about the future because you're working out, which relates to timelines.
Yes.
And it could be the main timeline, or it may be one that you don't follow, but that it relates that way.
When you say one you don't follow, do you believe that people are having consecutive lifetimes?
Yes, yes. Because when we come in into this, because we're primarily spiritual beings, and that's one of the main conclusions of my books. We're,
Amen.
This is a temporary experience. This is a learning experience. This is the plane of separation and limitation, because we're not really separate. And when you cross over into the next spirit realm, you realize that immediately. We're actually not separate now, but we think we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
The earthly part of us.
Yeah, and we're limited because of the conditioning we have. Our real true state is we're almost limitless. We have an unlimited potential.
Limitless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlimited potential.
Absolutely.
In our true state.
Absolutely.
But it may have been engineered that way, so that because the advantage of coming into like the 3D Earth environment is it will accelerate your learning because of the extreme contrast.
Oh,
That's the big advantage.
Exactly.
The disadvantage.
That was well put.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like the way that you phrased that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, that really kind of like sums it up what we're doing here. Because each lifetime brings us to a higher level of understanding until eventually, we don't have to.
I mean,
do
that's
this
the big
anymore.
advantage. The big disadvantage is there's a lot of negativity at this level. I mean, you have to deal with things like disease and crime and betrayal. And almost everybody experiences all these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's kind of like, if you want to use the word karma, balancing the karma of all those other times. We have to get it straight and balanced.
And those actually are learning experiences, as difficult as they are, but they're painful and they're rough.
Yes, they are.
Aren't Especially if you come from another Earth that doesn't have that much negativity, and I believe there's others out there that you can choose to be on.
Do you have problems absorbing other people's emotions? Do you feel that you're like a sponge? Or how do you protect yourself?
I don't. I have enough of a protection boundary within myself. Pam, who is also an empath, I know she struggles with that.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, see.
My empathy is a little bit more in terms of I will get some things like precognitions.
Yes.
Yes.
But do you pick up other people's feelings?
Yes, although I can, put up boundaries pretty quickly so that doesn't overwhelm me,
You're highly intuitive.
Yes.
Highly intuitive.
Like I said, those three things, the areas that I see are species, going forward in the future is in empathy, intuition, and telepathy. We're not that far away from telepathy. Most people actually have the ability right now.
Absolutely.
But it takes practice, and these are the kind of things probably should be being taught in school. Every bit as important.
I agree 100%. And do you know, as far as animals, though, they are all telepathic.
Yes, especially the dolphins. Now, you said you had 2 near-death experiences?
Yes, I did.
And I would say, too, that almost everybody that comes back from them comes back with some special abilities, healing or otherwise.
Well, I mean, I've been in contact with the angels since I was 4.
Wow.
Well, you've known me from before, and you've heard me talk about that. But let me ask you something. A lot of times, empaths, they need alone time.
Yeah, I'm one of those. Yes.
Are you one of them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I know there are some people who are just socially gregarious. They would love to be with people constantly, and they can't get enough. But I've always been one that I have to have a space during the day, at least an hour.
Yeah.
Sometimes more.
Yeah.
Where I'm just by myself, where I'm chilling out.
I understand.
And,
I understand.
Either meditating, reading a book, sometimes listening to certain types of music, but just having that personal space. And if I don't get it over a period of time, it has a detrimental effect.
Yeah. And a lot of times what, people in the audience, if you're relating to what Rob and I are talking about here, what you can do is if it overwhelms you, if you're empathic and it overwhelms you, Go out and take a walk, get in touch with nature, or just stop and read a book and just remove yourself a bit, because it can become overwhelming many, many times. And also, what about the energy vampires? There we go, because we have to get into, we're running out of time, and I want to get into this with you.
I don't really address those in my book.
Okay.
But I've read about them, and I know that there's people. Unfortunately, when you're an empath, you're giving out certain energy, and people will pick up on that.
Yep.
And there are people who...
Like a moth to the flame.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
I'm very
they're going to
aware
be
of that.
attracted to it because at a certain level, and they might not even know this consciously, they're going to be attracted to you.
Right.
Because they want that energy.
Because it's a light that you're giving off. Seriously, this very positive light. And they want that positive energy. And sometimes, some people call them psychic vampires, just want to suck up all your energy like that. But, and like you were saying about Pam, okay, your wife, so she has some problems blocking that. Well, the truth of the matter is, what you can do, you surround yourself with that brilliant, powerful white light, because you already are the white light, and you just encase yourself in that, and nothing can get through that. Nothing can enter that. Personally, I work with the Holy Spirit, and I have the Holy Spirit of God surrounding me, and no negative energy or any of that can happen.
No, she uses that technique too. But she will have something come up, like watching a TV program where there's like a sad story, and it will instantaneously, something will click, and she feels like,
Because empaths are very big-hearted people.
Yes.
Very loving, giving, big-hearted people. Yeah. So what else would you like to tell us and to finish up here? Because we only have 2 minutes, and the music is playing.
The other thing that the editor said about my book, in addition to being a lot, she said, while I was reading it, I felt like I was being exposed to voodoo.
Oh, come on. Why did you? Oh, no.
Well,
no. Audience, no.
That was humorous.
Oh,
I can
okay,
guarantee you there is nothing in this book.
No, it's beautiful.
There's
It's all
nothing
about
in
light,
this book that has to do with voodoo. But I know what she was talking
and
about.
positivity.
I know what she was talking about. It has a strong resonance.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And so
that's the way she interpreted that.
We're going to have to wrap up now.
Sure.
Okay. I want to thank you so much, Rob, for coming and joining us.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Any information that you would like, all you have to do is just, my email address is at the end of the show, and I will then forward it, any of your questions, to Rob. Thank you very much. And God bless you all. Many, 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 many bright blessings. Many bright blessings.
My blessings to your viewers. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
Sure.
Thank you for coming. You'll have to come back on again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good night. You can watch our show on Spectrum and Fios, and also on YouTube. Good night. Be well.